Marcus Aurelius Anderson, I appreciate you coming on the Parables podcast, man.
Man, thank you for having me, dude. I'm
Dude,
stoked.
dude, man. First off, I gotta tell you, dude, I love your name, dude. I feel like it's like in the realm of Hercules, Thor, things like that, man. You must be pretty proud to have an awesome name like that, huh?
Uh, it it's one of those things. It's a blessing and a curse. If you're an 11-year-old boy
Uh huh.
and you're being introduced to adults by your full name, and you look up and the adults know what your name is, but you have no idea who they are.
Yeah.
It's a name that you really can never be worthy of. But the beauty of it is, it made me always endeavor to try to be worthy of it,
Yeah.
and that's
Yeah.
why my grandfather's the one that named me. I was born on his birthday.
Oh, nice.
So my dad calls him, and my dad calls him. He's like, "Hey, Dad, we had a boy," and he says, "Oh, by the way, happy birthday." He says, "I'll let you name him." He says, "All right." He says it needs to be a strong name, like Marcus,
Yeah.
like Marcus Aurelius.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And Dad says, "So Marcus," and he said, "No, that's it."
Yeah.
And so, and so yeah. And as a little boy, I went by Mark
Yeah.
because Marcus seemed like too much.
Too much. Yeah.
And then even Marcus Aurelius, if you start looking up who that is as a kid,
Mm-hmm.
they said it was an emperor. I didn't understand that. They said he was a king, and I was like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, but even that is too much. So I'm just going to stick with Mark. And then I didn't even start going by Marcus until in my 20s. And then
Yeah. You finally embraced it, huh?
I was going to say that Marcus the Younger was one person, but now after my experiences, I feel that it's a name that I need to at least try to be
Yeah.
strong enough to have. So
That's good, man. So my name is obviously Ejay. I do have a real name, and I do not want to have that. I just want Ejay for the rest for the rest of my life, man. So, but anyway, dude, look, I appreciate you, man, and I want to apologize to you too because guys, Marcus just flew here from LAX,
mhm,
right?
mhm.
You flew from Oklahoma.
Tulsa, yep.
From Oklahoma, took an Uber,
Hmm.
and we're straight to recording, guys. So I appreciate you so much. And the
Oh
reason why I
man.
apologize is you went through LAX, and it dawned upon me, I live 15 minutes away from Ontario International Airport, and I think
Oh
you
wow.
could have flew in there. It would have been way easier. I apologize, man. I just thought about it like
It's all
earlier
good.
today, and I was thinking to myself like, dang, I'm pretty sure that he could fly into Ontario.
That would have been easier, but like you said, I was gonna be out here anyway, so it's not a big deal. Yeah.
Yeah, dude. So man, so guys, just a quick little intro. With Marcus, me and him were acquainted. We're both members of the Arte Syndicate. It is a group founded by Andy Frisell and Ed Milet, and amazing people. A group of leaders, a group of entrepreneurs, a group of people trying to be a force for good. And I've been fortunate enough and blessed to be acquainted with Marcus. He's doing amazing things. Usually on this podcast, Marcus, I don't like to give people an intro. I kind of like to, we kind of get to know you, dissect you, and you kind of introduce yourself as we go through your story. But as we were talking about before this recording, I have a lot of respect for you. I aspire to be, everything that you're doing. Marcus, he has an amazing podcast that he just launched. He's killing it, and he TEDx speaker, keynote speaker, best-selling author. And man, I could just keep. There's probably more that I don't even know about that we're probably gonna find out right now. But again, I appreciate you coming on here. Um, you know, everything you're doing, I love. You are the prime
Thank
example
you.
of the type of guest I like to bring on here because my goal is to spread your mission and your impact. And as you know, anything that people can take away from our conversation, that is the goal. So they could
Absolutely.
apply it to their life and hopefully become the best version of them. You know what I mean?
I agree.
So let's start off real quick about your get to know you a little bit. I have an idea. Actually, probably not, to be honest. Usually I find out the most interesting things from my guests, but let's get to know you a little bit, like where you grew up, and everything that's translated to kind of with the gift of adversity and everything you're doing to where you are today.
Yeah. So for me, born and raised in Oklahoma, Tulsa, Oklahoma was where I was born, and I was raised in Oklahoma for the most part. Um, Parents were divorced when I was about 8, and I mentioned that because my father was a huge role model for me. But at that time, when I was younger, my great uncle was a really, really big role model for me. And
Great uncle.
great uncle,
Okay.
yeah. I called him Uncle Ronnie, but he was actually my great uncle. He served in special forces. He was in Vietnam. He was in long range reconnaissance. He served multiple tours, and he was the consummate quiet professional. So everything, like I could tell that my father, there was just like this amount of respect for Uncle Ronnie that was unsaid. Like you could just sense it. It was palpable. And everybody that was around him, if there was anything going on, it was like people would naturally sort of just gravitate towards him to kind of see how he would react towards things. And now that I know more about him, even after the fact, and now that I've served, I have a much even greater appreciation of what he did, because he's not going to tell you, an 8 or 9-year-old boy what he did or what he had to do for his country. And he was very much of the idea that, because he served, he was a lifer, he did 20 years. And then once he got out, he said, I'm very proud to have served my country, but now I just kind of want to live my life and enjoy that freedom.
Yeah.
So very humble, very quiet, very stoic, hard worker, honor, respect, humility, just like what we talk about in Arte all the time, that the ideas of the ethos. And so he and my father were my two biggest role models. And I say that because later on, as we develop, parts of him will really, really be significant in the direction that we go. But I originally wanted to go into criminal justice, and I moved to Kansas City, Missouri, to go into their criminal justice system there, and the University of Missouri, Kansas City. And then when I was preparing, I've been doing martial arts since I was about 12, and when I was preparing for a fight, I hurt my shoulder really bad, and there was a chiropractor I didn't know he was a chiropractor at the time, but I'm in the gym trying to lift weights, and my range of motion is just
All
not
jacked
really
up.
there. Yeah, because you're throwing literally thousands of punches, so you're basically sort of barely dislocating your shoulder every time.
Yeah, yeah.
And so this guy is kind of watching me through the mirror, and he says, "How long has that been hurting?" And I'm like, "Well, why do you care about it?" And he says, "Oh, I'm a chiropractor." And I was like, "Oh, you're a chiropractor. Okay." Smoke and mirrors, right? You're just going to try to give me some snake oil. And he gives me his card, and I said, "Well, I'm not going to go into a witch doctor." He says, "Well, if I don't make you better, you don't have to pay me." I was like, "I'll see you Monday, doc."
Wow.
So go in. He adjusts my spine. I was like, okay, I'd never been adjusted before, so that sounded kind of neat. But you're a nurse, so I had an anterior inferior humerus that was subluxated. And so he clears my spine, and then he gets me in position, and then just sets that thing.
Yeah.
And it sounds like a gun going off.
Yeah.
And I have almost full range of motion and
instant pain relief.
Yeah, almost. And I was just blown away, and I was like, okay, how did you do that? And how did you know what to do in the first place?
Yeah. Is this a mind trick?
Yeah, exactly. Is this Jedi mind trick? And so, we hit it off, and he says, "Well, I'm getting ready to have lunch. You want to go have a discussion?" I was like, "Sure." And I love the idea of the body healing itself, and what the body's ability to overcompensate as necessary to regulate that for homeostasis. I was like, that's amazing, and it really blends well with the martial arts, that idea of yin and yang.
Yeah.
And he said, I think that philosophically you're really, really powerfully aligned with this. He said, you'd be an amazing chiropractor. And I was like, okay, so what is it, like a weekend seminar? And he's like, no, it's a doctorate. And
it's fairly new during that time, right? Like
at that time it was, but
yeah.
it's still a an 8-year, a 6-year degree.
Yeah.
Because you have to get a degree in human biology and then push all that into the rest of it. So, and of course, I'm going one direction with criminal justice, so I'd have to basically stop and go all the way back the other direction and start taking organic chemistry, biology, and
kind of go backwards a little bit.
Yeah, but just like anything in life, I'm not afraid to take a step back if I can move forward. So I said, all right. So there's a chiropractic school there in Kansas City. It was a good chiropractic school, but philosophically it didn't really align with me. And so got accepted into the program, started going there, and then eventually decided to go to Atlanta, which is where Life University is, which is one of the best chiropractic schools in the world.
Okay.
And again, I lost about 2 years of my credits, but if this is what it takes to get me where I need to go, absolutely, I'll do it.
Yeah.
And so that's where I was in Atlanta, and chiropractic school was was difficult, but it was a part of the process, and I liked Atlanta an awful lot.
Uh-huh. Yeah. And schooling was about 6 years also, like you said?
It was about 6 years. Before I got into the military, I was about a year and a half away from my doctorate.
Uh-huh.
And I joined the military at 38. I was married in Atlanta, got married while I was there. And what happened is, like so many of us, as a man, I sort of thought that my definition of my manhood was the ability to provide,
Yeah.
was my vocation, was my occupation,
Yeah.
was what I could do. So I'm going to chiropractic school at 25 hours of doctorate level courses a week,
Yeah.
or, in that course. And I'm also working 40 hours a week as a bartender,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't even drink. So it's like I'm getting very little sleep. I'm pushing everything to the max.
Yeah.
I'm literally like doing bulimic learning, where I'm memorizing all this stuff about biochemistry and regurgitating the
Yeah.
Krebs cycle. And now that I'm done with that, I'm moving on to the next thing and trying to get neuro figured out,
Mm-hmm.
and not spending enough time on what is really a priority. So I deprioritized what I should have, which was my marriage.
Mm.
And because I did that, because in my mind, I'm thinking, listen, if I can just push this for the next 2 years, by the time I get out, now we can start preparing to have a family. I'm doing all this for us.
You could like make up for it almost.
I was thinking that I could do that.
Yeah.
But the reality is, in this life, if everything is a priority, then nothing is a priority.
Mm-hmm.
And whether you realize it or not, you have priorities. And even if you don't put them on a board that says this is my priority,
Mm-hmm.
what you repeatedly do and put energy and time into is what your priority is.
Yeah, your actions speak.
They
for you, right?
absolutely do.
Yeah.
And so for me, because I was prioritizing the wrong things, my marriage fell apart.
Mm-hmm.
And then not long after that, I get a phone call, and it's my dad, and he says, Uncle Ronnie's sick, come home.
Mm.
So I get on a plane, and by the time I get there, he's already gone.
Mm.
So that's a brutal 1-2 punch to be knocked down with the adversity of being divorced and trying to cope with that, and then having my uncle, pass.
Mm-hmm.
And this is why, like I mentioned all that before, because I was a pallbearer for him, and my uncle was always very strong, so I was trying to keep that in mind when I was there.
Mm-hmm.
And he was this pillar of just strength. And I keep it all together, and there's like a full bird colonel that comes and eulogizes him, and person after person is coming up and talking about this mission and all the stuff he's done, and the 21 gun salute, and he's so well decorated and all this stuff, and I'm just blown away by the regalia and the amount of respect they gave him.
Mm-hmm. Like it gave you a new light of who he was.
It-
You started to learn more about him
Absolutely.
than you did as being a
That's
family
what it
member.
was. They brought a magazine. They brought up a Life magazine, and they opened it up, and it was a 2-page spread, and it was a picture of him putting on his camo, his face makeup to do recon that night.
Yeah.
And that it was just insane to see this man that I knew, and then to see what his life really was.
Yeah.
At that point. But I lost it when they started playing taps.
Mm.
When they started playing taps, and they started folding the flag
Mm-hmm.
from his casket, and they fold it into that triangle, and then they fold it neatly and perfectly, and they hand it to my great aunt.
Mm-hmm.
And they say, the color guard says, we're sorry for your loss. Thank you for your sacrifice.
Yeah.
And that's when all bets were off. I just fell apart, because she's blood, she falls apart, I'm falling apart. And I really don't remember a lot of it after that. And then, I'm at this point, I'm 38 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm divorced. I have no kids.
Mm-hmm.
I know that if I stop school, that they will pause me where I'm at,
Mm-hmm.
and that I can come back. And so
Kind of resume where you left off.
that's
Okay.
what it was. So I'd always wanted to join the military, but just like everything in life, I had an excuse why I shouldn't.
Mhm.
Oh, I'm doing this in school, or I'm doing this. And I realized that my window was now.
Okay.
So
Yeah, I was just going to ask you what compelled you to join the military all of a sudden.
That's
But
what
you
it-
always wanted to.
I'd
I'm
always-
sure you took that from your great uncle.
absolutely, and that
Yeah.
idea of because you want to serve your country, but also the reality for me was I needed something to kick me in the ass. I needed something that was going to push me. And there is no greater sense of urgency than like an approaching form of adversity, knowing that there's something coming. So I go talk to the recruiter to see if I can get in.
Yeah.
And I walk in and he's like, how old are you? And I was like, 38. And I said, what's the window? He says, 35. So I turn to leave and he says, well, come back and talk to me. And I'm not really in a talkative mood.
Yeah.
And I say, well, if this isn't going to happen, then why are you even wasting my fucking time?
Yeah. Yeah.
And he says, well, just talk to me and let me know why you want to do this.
Yeah.
So I go through and kind of explain what we just talked about. And he says, he says, well, are you smart? I said, I don't know. I'm 38 years old. I'm talking to a fucking recruiter. What do you think?
You're like, I'm also in school for it, you know? Yeah.
So, but he gives me an ASVAB, and I, after doctorate degree in biology, doctorate level courses, I crushed that. And then he looks at that and he says, well, colors, flying colors off the charts. He says, well, are you in good shape? How many push-ups can you do? Again, I don't do push-ups for fun. Yeah. But I maxed the PT test out too. So as far as he's concerned, I'm smart. I'm in great shape.
You checked off all the whole list.
All of it. And I'm older. I'm mature. I'm a natural leader. And he says, okay, you are exactly what the Army is looking for. So, and the thing is with the Army is if you have all the qualifications, they will let you do whatever you want to do. Yeah. So he was showing me, you could do this job and do this job, and you could make this money and do this, and you could get trained for 4 years in the military, and they would train you to do all this stuff. And then when you translate to the civilian sector, you could, have that training in, and you would be, six figures, blah, 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 blah. And
interesting. Kind of like you could definitely choose your own path. Well, like almost all careers, but I mean.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. And he said, so what do you want to do? I said, I already know what I want to do. You can just stop. He says, well, what do you want to do? And I said, infantry. Wow. And he kind of starts laughing. He's like, Anderson, you don't get it. You can do whatever you want. And I said, Sergeant, you don't get it. This is what I want. Yeah. And if I can't do this,
then you don't want in no more.
Walking out. Yep. Yeah. And he tried to, speak some sense into me, and we went back and forth for a little bit. And once he realized that I was resolute in that decision, he says, sign the release and slid it over. He's like, hey man, it's your life. And so,
what made you want to do the infantry compared to all the other options that they offered you?
Yeah, that was the question. The thing was, because I had a degree, he says, well, I could send you to officer candidate school. And then, you could be a lieutenant, you could do all this other stuff. And I said, would I be guaranteed to be in the infantry? Yeah. He said, well, you would have to fight, basically compete to get, a position as an infantry officer. I said, but as an enlisted person, which is what my great uncle was, I said, once I get that MOS, once I get that delegation, that's what I am, right? I'm 11 Bravo. He said, yeah. I said, I'll just do that.
I see. Okay.
And so he said, well, you understand that that's like one of the, they call them grunts, He said, that's the gruntiest work that there is. I said, I understand, but I cannot learn if I don't get dirty, if I'm not out there, if I'm just behind, a bunch of people are behind a desk and say, hey, you guys go do that. It doesn't have the same sort of impact.
Absolutely. It's kind of like starting from the ground up, and you know what it's like.
That's exactly it. Yeah. That's exactly what it is. So, signed in with the enlisted, and I had 6 months before I was going away to infantry school. So for those 6 months, because I had that timeline, I trained my guts out. I studied as much as I possibly could to set myself up to succeed, because I knew going in at 38, I was going to be competing against people that are half my age. Yeah, yeah. And so when you get into the military at that age, you're either considered a person who is really respected and they really want to serve their country, or you're a person who is basically having a midlife crisis. Yeah. And you're running away to join the Army to get away from what's going on.
I was just going to ask you, was there a lot of people thought you were having a midlife crisis?
It was about 50-50.
Oh, 50-50, okay.
Yeah,
okay.
And you would have some younger guys that would look at you with respect, and other guys that look at you like, what's this guy doing here? But the beauty of the infantry is what you earn is what you get. So if you're there and you are crying and you're pissing and moaning about how bad everything is and how it's cold or it's hot or whatever, you're probably not going to make it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So 6 months later, I'm getting out the bus at Fort Benning, getting yelled at by guys younger than me with their big brown round, drill sergeant caps on, and
Yeah.
but that's what I needed.
Mm-hmm.
I needed something to give me a clear, definitive kick in the ass. And the nice thing with the military is, just like we were talking about earlier, if I'm not squared away, if I don't have everything that I need, not only may I die, but somebody else may die.
Mm-hmm.
So if I don't have enough ammo, if I don't have enough water, if I'm not hydrated,
Yeah.
somebody else's life is in my hands. So that is one of the best motivations that you could possibly have.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a grenade in your hand and you're learning how to throw it and you're not paying really good attention, and you realize that once you drop this spoon that other people can die, it really takes your attention to a higher level.
Yeah, absolutely. Your accountability and responsibility as a whole. Yeah.
It really does.
Yeah.
But it's a fantastic experience, and it's what I needed at that point in my life for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'd have done it at any other time, you and I wouldn't be talking right now.
Yeah. Yeah. So you joined. How long were you in the military, or before you got out?
I was in for 3 years. Ironically, I only signed a 3-month or a 3-year contract anyway.
Okay.
But I left around the same time I was supposed to, but not under the conditions that I had anticipated. So.
Okay. Did you and just chime in if I'm fast forwarding too fast.
No,
so did you, after you got out, did you explore going back to school, or did you what happened after that?
Well, for me, what happened was, and we'll talk about more of the story, but I still have neuropathy in my hands and my feet.
Okay.
So from the middle of my forearms down, like from that nerve root, like C5, C6, C7,
Yeah.
C8, all of that is a little bit compromised.
Mm-hmm.
And then even with my feet, so I can still move and I still have like dexterous capacity and motor skills, but not nearly like it was before. And that's because of the nerve damage that I still have.
The nerve damage. Okay.
From the injury and stuff.
Mm-hmm. And how did you get this injury?
So in 2012, I was stationed with Fort Drum. It's a 10th Mountain. So 10th Mountain is one of the most illustrious infantry units in the world. If you've heard of Operation Anaconda or Black Hawk Down, which they made a movie and they wrote a big book about, that was a unit that I was with. I wasn't with them at the time, obviously, but those are the kind of people that we were learning from. And this is in 2012, so this is where we're getting ready to deploy. And Fort Drum is stationed 20 miles south of the Canadian border. It's in upstate New York. It's very cold. Mm. So this is in February, and between the lake effect and the mountain effect with the cold air and everything, it's always raining. It's always snowing. It's always brutal. Mm-hmm. So when you would go out to train, you would train for weeks at a time. Mm-hmm. So you would go out for 2 weeks out in the elements, and you're basically in battle conditions. Mm-hmm. So not a lot of sleep, not a lot of water, etc. What would happen though is whenever we would come back in, even whenever I would get like a warm shower and stuff, I was still having a hard time moving my hands or my feet, or when we would do runs, my run time was compromised, and I just attributed that to the cold air. Mm-hmm. I was even having a hard time holding on to the pull-up bars, which was different because I have a strong grip most of the time, but again, I just wrote that off as well. It's because it's cold out or whatever. Yeah. And as a soldier, your mind is always battling your body. Yeah. Your body is always trying to give up. Your body's always trying to tell you that you're tired or trying to break your focus. It's like a child. Yeah. And that's why I'm always big on mindset, because your mind will push your body to the breaking point if your mindset's strong enough. Mm-hmm. But I guess my story is also a cautionary tale in that. So when we were preparing to deploy, I ruptured a disc in my neck at C5. So when the disc ruptured, because there are people that will have bulging discs or whatever, but when a disc actually ruptured, as you know, it completely ruptures and it pushes back into the spinal cord. Mm-hmm. And your spinal cord is very delicate. It's like strands of silk. Yeah. And your central nervous system is the master system that controls everything. So it takes 10 millimeters of mercury of pressure to compromise a nerve, which is about the weight of a dime. Mm-hmm. And when you have the consistency and thickness of like a hockey puck, like our discs are in our neck, and then you're really pushing down onto the spinal cord like that, it's almost like a water hose when there's water going through it.
Yeah.
If you step on it, there's no water going through it.
Yeah.
So for me, it compressed so powerfully that there was no cerebral spinal fluid functioning. There was nothing communicating between my brainstem and down there. So it's to the point where I'm not even able to move.
Yeah.
So they take me to the hospital, and this is going to sound stupid, but even when I'm in the ambulance, and even though I have like medical background, I'm thinking to myself, man, I hope this doesn't take long.
Yeah.
I hope that they can just give me a shot, because I've got my team, they're depending on me, we're getting ready to deploy, and this is,
soldier mentality.
I've got this mission. Exactly. You're mission driven and laser focused all the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
But once I got in there and they put me in the gurney and they're shining lights in my eyes and poking and prodding me, and they give me the MRI, that's when I'm realizing, yeah, this is not something that's just going to go away on its own.
You knew it was like something serious, definitely.
It absolutely was. And then when they put me in the holding room and they come back and they're like, well, we're prepping you, that's when I knew that, yeah, this is not going to be something that I can just get away from.
Did you lose all sensation and movement from?
Yeah, from the neck down, I couldn't move. I could move my head, and that was it. Wow. And that's when they were like, yeah, this is a big deal. So.
How did, obviously, like we talk about my nursing background, and I've taken care of a lot of patients with, something similar. When it finally dawned upon you how serious it was, and then they officially gave you the diagnosis, what was going through your mind, man?
I was still in that kind of denial. I was still hoping it wasn't a big deal. I was hoping that it was something that, like, there was part of me that thought, oh, I probably just need like an adjustment.
Yeah, the chiro.
Yeah, I was like, oh, I just need to get a chiro.
Like, yo, someone called the chiro over here and crack me real quick.
Take care of this. We got to go.
Yeah.
But that was something. And the thing too is, like I said, I had all that symptomatology leading up to it, but I would just kind of shut it off.
Yeah.
And which again sounds great, but it's one of those things where there's a reason why we have limits. And I know that people think that limits are bad, but I want people to understand that in some ways limits are very good.
Yeah.
So if I give you a time limit, if I tell you, Parkinson's law dictates that the more time that we allot towards something, the longer it takes for us to get it done. So if you've ever been in school, which I know a lot of people listening have been, and they give you an assignment that's due Friday, if they give it to you on Monday, if you would just bust your ass on Monday, you could probably get it done.
Yeah.
But most people don't. They usually wait till Tuesday, start on a little bit. No, they don't really want to work on it. They mess around Wednesday, and then by Thursday night, they're like, I got to get this done.
Procrastination settled in.
So now they say, oh, I stayed up all night. They stay up till 2 or 3 in the morning. They push through. It takes them about 4 hours of real work. And then they come in Friday morning and they look like they've been wrecked, right?
Yeah.
And they talk about it. But if you look at it, in actuality, it only took them 4 hours to get it done because of that deadline. So we don't need more time. We need a deadline in our lives, no matter what it is. So that's why I'm saying that limits are important. If there is no time limit on anything, there is no urgency to get anything done.
Yeah.
So by understanding that you have a finite amount of time in your life, understand that you have a finite amount of hours, quality hours in your life. They say that we have about 30,000 quality hours in our life. So what do you want to do with those?
Yeah.
Do you want to just sit around and binge on Game of Thrones? I mean, Game of Thrones is great, but
yeah. Thank God it's over, man.
Right? That's it.
My life's back to normal.
Yeah. And in the grand scheme of things, would you rather spend that time with your wife, with your kids, doing something that impacts other people in a positive manner?
Yeah.
Or would you rather just, kind of go through the motions, what everybody else is kind of doing? And so that's why it's important to understand those kind of things. So knowing that I had that deadline of deployment, that's why I pushed as hard as I did.
Yeah.
But again, there are diminishing returns at some point. The Taoists say that if I continually sharpen a blade, it goes blunt. If I continually try to fill up a teacup, eventually it overflows, and now it can no longer hold anything. The vessel is full.
Yeah.
So understanding that there is a limit is important, because it doesn't mean it should limit you. It means that it should give you more of a focused idea of what you want to get done in that amount of time, or with that amount of capacity that you possess.
Yeah.
And that's why I think it's important. So while everybody's like, oh, there's no limits, it's like there are no limits, technically. But if you can use that to give you urgency, to give you like a specific idea of where you want to go, you will get a hell of a lot more done in that amount of time
Yeah.
than if you just say, well, I'll do that tomorrow, because tomorrow's that magical place where nothing gets done.
Yeah. Being busy versus productive.
That's exactly it.
Well, so how does someone, we'll get back to your story real quick, but how does someone, because I almost feel like, of course, everybody's gone through it, right? Through that procrastination and not setting coming to terms with the limits and things like that. How does someone able to identify what's their limit versus what they're capable of doing?
And that's the delicate balance. I love David Goggins and all these people that are very push. And Goggins talks about it in Special Forces. They talk about too, is the 40% rule. It says that when we want to give up, we're usually at about 40% of our capacity. But most people never get beyond that. Most people never genuinely ask themselves enough.
Yeah.
And the only thing that will push you beyond that is adversity.
Yeah.
Because adversity is something that gives you no quarter. It doesn't pull any punches. It shows up unannounced at the most inopportune times without apology. It doesn't give a damn about what you want. It doesn't care about your feelings. And it doesn't take no for an answer.
Yeah.
So it spurs you forward even when you don't want to do it.
Yeah.
And that's why you have to find something. Because here's the reality in this life. If you don't decide what you want your own adversity to be that will push you to be a better person, eventually something else in life will come.
I was going to say something's going to be chosen for you.
It will be chosen for you. And now it will be something that you will not want to do, but you will be forced to do it even more. And that's why when you find some people that they hit hardship, it is a catalyst and it pushes them forward.
Yeah.
Other people, that hardship is that's their ceiling, and they will never get beyond that point.
Yeah, definitely.
And those are the people that never get beyond that, the people that never learn the lesson. Those are the people that hate Monday, love Friday, talk about it all over social media.
Hate going to work.
They hate going to work, and they will one-up you. They will, if you hear somebody saying something, oh yeah, well my life or my weekend or the blah, 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 blah. And they love that cycle, that victim mentality.
Yeah, almost like they're entitled to something all the time.
They're entitled to it. And here's the other thing. It's like a child that seeks out attention. If a child cannot get attention by doing the right thing, they will do the wrong thing as long as they can still get attention. So if you have a person who, again, has this entitlement, a person who is pissed off that their coffee is cold, whatever the case may be, those people don't understand that they are literally propagating that idea, and that's what their identity is now. So now they're that sarcastic, passive-aggressive person that's pessimistic about everything at work or in the relationship or around their friends or whatever it is. And now, because they get validation from that, they will continue to do that. And now, if they break away from that, they're afraid to do it because this is the only thing that they know. Yeah. This is the only thing that they get any sort of like recognition from.
It's like they're in this like unbreakable comfort zone, right?
It's a comfort zone, not so much that they're comfortable, but because it's familiar.
Yeah, it's familiar.
And they unfortunately, they're doing the wrong thing. They think that familiarity is what comfort or preference is, when in actuality, it's just the only thing that they're getting any kind of validation from.
Yeah.
So just like we talk about how people are afraid of other people's opinions, even a person who is in that place where they want to break out of it, because that's their identity that they've created, they paint themselves into a corner intellectually, and now they are afraid of the opinion of other people. If they say something optimistic, they're like, really, Ejay?
Yeah.
You're not going to tell us about how the weather sucks or how, it's too humid or whatever? It's like, no, they were afraid to do that. So that becomes their own self-fulfilling prophecy.
So going back to your story, the adversity was your gift. You suffered this terrible paralysis condition, and it's safe to say that, of course, that was what came good out of it, was the gift of adversity. Before we jump more into that, how was your recovery? Because clearly you walked to the studio.
Yeah, I did.
So we know you're good, thank God.
Yeah.
And how was the recovery?
It was
and describe to me maybe like the mental state, some of the things that were going through your mind, because I obviously this is where the adversity part starts to shine here a little bit.
Yeah, I died on the table twice.
Man.
And you know, that was the thing, because when I'm getting ready to go under the knife, they tell me what's going on. So I know enough about anatomy. And I said, oh, so you're going to do a discectomy? They said, yeah. And I said, you're going to completely ankylose C5 and C6,
Mm-hmm.
yada, yada, yada. And then I said, but after that, then I should be good, right?
Yeah.
And then it's just quiet.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're asking if you're going to be able to walk again and all you hear is crickets, that's not what you want to hear.
Yeah. It's almost like as if you didn't want to know this stuff.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. But, you know, the surgeon's job is not to help me rehabilitate.
Yeah.
His job is to help me survive it, get through it, put the metal in my neck, and then make sure I survive.
Mm-hmm.
The rest of it's up to me or my team or occupational therapist or physical therapist or whatever. So when I wake up in the ICU, I'm in a neck brace. So what little movement I did have is gone.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm still paralyzed from the neck down. And he walks in and he sits at the foot of the table. And he says, well, Mr. Anderson, welcome back to the land of the living. I know what he's talking about. And I'm trying to talk and my throat's...
Yeah, obviously sore.
It's sore and it's raw, and they've jammed. I realize now they were jamming stuff down my throat to try to bring me back.
Yeah.
And he says, you know, we lost you. And I didn't know what he meant, lost me. He said, no, you had us nervous because you were gone twice. He said, I didn't think we were going to get you back the second time.
Wow.
And so within a 12-hour period, I'm paralyzed, don't know what's going on, operate on, wake up, and I'm being told this, and I'm just...
You're just trying to digest everything.
Yeah, it's
here,
like
right?
this whole pile of stuff I can't even deal with yet, and now that's being thrown on top of it.
Yeah.
And he says, you know, I don't want to even give you the hope of walking. He says, because that's what I was trying to find out. He says, the good news is you're back from the land of the living, but the reality is this is what you're stuck with.
Yeah.
And just start trying to wrap your mind around it now, because if you don't, you're going to be angry and bitter for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
So he left, and, you know, I'm on pain medication, so I'm in and out of sleep or whatever. And there's part of me, that soldier part, that's like, you have this indomitable spirit.
Yeah.
And you think, well, if I can overcome death, this walking thing shouldn't be a big deal.
Yeah, it's like, no, I could get through this.
I can do this. But my optimism lasted for that day, and then the next morning, and then the next day, and then the next morning. And I was in denial, classic denial.
Mm-hmm.
But once I was in ICU for a week, and then they pull me out and they take me back to my unit, now it's like, this is real.
Yeah. It started to really start settling.
It's starting to set in, and now there's no newness to it. Now it's like, this is just what it is.
Mm.
And that's when I went into, I was the most angry I've ever been in my life, because I was angry and I would project it towards everybody around me.
Mm-hmm.
But the reality was I was angry at myself.
Mm-hmm. In what sense?
I was angry because I looked at all the opportunities that I've been given.
Yeah.
And I realized only too late that I'd squandered all that time.
Mm-hmm.
I had all this physical potential, all this intellectual potential, and I was just doing just enough to get by. I was just going through mediocrity.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just using talent or genetic gifts that I was given to allow me to get a little bit higher than the people around me. So I thought, well, you know, this person's making 50 grand. If I'm making 100 grand, I guess I'm doing better.
Yeah.
But if your capacity is to make $100 million and you're making 100 grand, you're really selling yourself short. And you're also being selfish because you're not helping those people around you that could really use your help,
Yeah.
that you would be actually doing the work for to be able to create that kind of an income. So the other reason I was mad was because the definition of anger that's directed inwards is depression.
Mm-hmm.
So I turned 40 years old in a bed, broke, divorced, bedridden, paralyzed.
Man.
And when most people are 40, they're looking back on their life. They've got kids. They've got this incredible home. They've got this incredible marriage and this, 2.5 vehicles and 3
Well,
pets.
that and you don't ever plan on spending your birthday in a hospital.
No,
Yeah.
nobody does. And for most people, that is a big milestone.
Yeah.
But my milestone at that point was like, I have nothing. I've committed everything I can in my life to this one thing, and I don't even have that.
Mm-hmm.
So at this point, I'm depressed. I'm literally suicidal.
Mm.
But again, I still can't even kill myself
Mm-hmm.
because I'm not physically able.
Yeah.
So now I have no other choice other than to just lie in a bed, look at my life really hard, and just be pissed off. And I was livid for 3 months. I was just mad at everyone. And the thing was, with all this martial art teaching I'd had my entire life, and all this like philosophy from Marcus Aurelius and the Stoics and Zen and Buddhism and Taoism, all these things started coming back in my mind. But the thing is, it sounds like a bunch of flowery bullshit when you're the guy that's lying in the bed and you can't move and your life has been ripped away from you.
Yeah, yeah. When it's a different circumstance, different, yeah.
It's one of those things where, like if your buddy's going through something, we empathize with him, but we're like, oh, he's going to be fine. He's going to get through it. But the reason we say that is because we're not the ones that are going through it.
Yeah.
When it's us, when it's our pain, it's different.
It's a, well, for you, it's like the end of the world.
It absolutely
You know,
is.
but like, let's just say it's nothing that serious compared to what you were going through. But if it's something, yeah, it's almost the end of the world because it's me.
That's
us.
That's it. We want to be the exception to the rule.
Yeah, it's internalized. Yeah, yeah.
It's like you can be philosophical about somebody else's headache, but not our own.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting there and I'm thinking about all these things that are coming back in my mind, and I'm just like, that's a bunch of crap. But what I eventually did was I realized that after 3 months of being angry, I knew that the anger was not helping me.
Mm-hmm.
It was inhibiting my ability to recover.
Mm-hmm.
2, I knew I had to do something to counteract it.
Mm-hmm.
And for most people, the opposite of anger is love.
Mm-hmm.
I really didn't have a lot of love around me, though.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to find the next thing. And the closest thing that I could find was genuine, unconditional gratitude.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that people talk about gratitude, and I know that it's a big buzzword, and I know that most people, when they are practicing gratitude, are not really, in my mind, not doing it the way that the way it's meant to be done.
Oh, I bet, especially with the type of gratitude that you discovered being in bedridden and all that stuff.
That's what it is.
What's now that we're speaking about gratitude, what's the huge misconception, or what are people taking for granted, I guess, with gratitude?
Yeah, they're doing it like it's just something that they journal about. They check the box.
And I want to know because I'm probably doing it. Not gonna lie. I'm not gonna lie.
No, here's the thing. If you look at unconditional love,
Mm-hmm.
like you love your wife
Yeah.
unconditionally, and you may not agree with your wife, and you may not even like your wife sometimes
Mm-hmm.
if she does something you don't like, but you still love her unconditionally, and there's nothing that she can do where you will not have that love. Gratitude is the same way.
Mm-hmm.
Gratitude is something that has to be unconditional, and you cannot just go through and pick the stuff in your life that you like and be grateful only for that stuff.
Yeah.
Because that's not how gratitude works. Because if that's how you look at it, let's say honestly, let's say that 50% of your day is stuff that you love and you're really grateful for, and 50% of it is stuff that you don't like at all and that you hate and you're just enduring.
Mm.
If you do that, that means that if half of your day is good and half of it's bad, that means that literally half of your life will be something that you are not grateful for.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah.
Literally half of your waking hours will be something that you detest. But if you can look at something and find something to learn from it,
Mm-hmm.
because there is opportunity within adversity.
Absolutely, yeah.
If you're willing to do the work,
Mm-hmm.
if you're willing to stay there and look at it. And for me, I didn't have any other choice. I had to sit there and look at it.
Mm-hmm.
I had to sit there and look at it and say, I see you.
Mm-hmm. Don't be mad when I say this, but you weren't going nowhere.
Yeah, that's it. It's like, I'm right
know?
here.
Yeah.
I'm not afraid of you. What is this?
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of it. And martial arts is a great example of it. If you have arrogance or hubris, there is somebody at a higher rank that will put you in check
Mm-hmm.
quickly.
Yeah.
And life does that to us.
Mm-hmm.
So if you go through and you can figure out, and the thing is, you learn more from a loss than you ever do a victory.
Yeah.
So if you can find out, adversity is shining a light on your weakness somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
There's a hole in your game somewhere. So if that's the case, then figure out what lesson you're supposed to learn from it. Figure out where your weakness is. Don't take it personally. Don't get aggravated at it. Don't say, why me?
Mm-hmm.
Don't be a victim about it, because the minute you say, why me, you're taking your eye off the ball. You're losing this opportunity to learn from it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the problem is adversity, like I say, it doesn't really care about what your opinion is.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a natural law. It's like gravity.
Yeah.
So it's there. So you can either choose to use that as something to move you forward, or you can use it as something that will stop and arrest your development.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm pissed off at the person who's cut me off in traffic, that doesn't help me.
Yeah.
But if I use that as an opportunity to have empathy and realize maybe he's having a bad day, maybe his wife's hurt, maybe he's trying to get home because there's this other stuff going on.
Mm-hmm.
Now, two things happen. One, it allows me to be grateful for what I already do have. And also, it helps me look at the opportunity that I'm learning from this to learn, you know what, this is my chance to learn patience. This is my chance to wonder what that guy's doing.
I love it, man.
This is my opportunity to win. And now, if you can do that, if you can have that unconditional 360 gratitude, no matter what happens in your life, everything is a blessing.
Mm-hmm.
And you're bulletproof.
I love it. I think I almost see it as if what you're trying to say is, you have to find something to learn from that. You can't just pick something and say, "Oh, I'm thankful for this," and that's it.
No, that's not how life works. And if you do that, then you're going to find that you're going to get smaller and smaller things to be grateful for.
Yeah.
And for me, so what I did was when I'm lying in that bed, I used a Zen technique where I took myself out of the equation. And I said, okay, I can't be grateful for what's going on with me right now, but did anybody gain something from me being hurt? Anyone in the world?
Wow, that's a powerful question.
Well, when you have 3 months to bounce it around,
Yeah,
mentally, you're doing, because when you're that desperate, you will think anything. You'll try anything.
Oh yeah,
if it gives you an opportunity to maybe feel a little bit better.
Yeah.
So what I did was I thought, well, I believe that this injury was inevitable. It was going to happen no matter. So whether I was in Afghanistan, Iraq, or in the U.S., it was going to happen. So if I had been deployed when it happened, for every one man who was injured in combat, it takes 2 to pull him to safety. So if I'd have been over there with the infantry deployed, that means my team would have been compromised.
Would have been liable for another life.
That's it. My squad would have been compromised.
Yeah.
The medevac, they had to fly in. The helicopter, that's a huge helicopter, right?
So it's almost like one life for like 15 or something.
That's it. And that's what it is. So a big Chinook would have had to fly in, all the medical people there. And when I did that and I looked and I was able to say, man, there were literally 20, 30 other people's lives who would have been put in harm's way if I'd have been injured over there. Yeah. And that's when I literally said it. I said, wow, I'm lucky. And I couldn't even believe I was saying it. But once I did that and I started having genuine, unconditional gratitude, a week after I started seeing my adversity as a gift instead of a curse, I started getting a little bit of feeling back.
Wow.
A little bit of movement back in this hand.
I'm getting chills, man. Just think of it, yeah.
And that was the reality. And then it was like I was grateful for the linen on my bed and the bed I may never get out of, and the people that came and took care of me, and the room I may never leave. And it was one of those things where once you have that cornerstone of like genuine, legit gratitude, you can build a castle from that if you start from that right place. But if you don't, and you have this like fake gratitude, which the reason I say that is because people will, I hate seeing people that have a victim mentality, and I hate it because it reminds me of the way I felt as a victim when I was there. And what happens is a lot of people will just have all this stuff going on in their life that they could be doing something about, but they choose not to. And they just sit on their hands and they say, oh, but I'm grateful.
Yeah.
And it's, like I said, it's a defeated mentality. It is the assumption that they will never be able to do anything about it. So they just kind of shrug their shoulders and just say, well, there's nothing I can do about this.
Yeah.
And in this life, if you do that, if you hesitate, if you wait, you will be waiting for the rest of your days, and you will never, ever even scratch the surface of the potential that you possess.
Yeah. I almost feel, this is an opinion, but I almost feel like it's also a slap to the face for the people who have it way worse. I know we shouldn't be comparing, but you know what I mean? There's people like, such as yourself, who, was in this condition, you know what I mean? Went to a dark place, when there's other people who feeling entitled doing this when they're just not happy with their job, maybe. You know what I mean? And I hate to use it as, comparing, because, as we know, you should never compare yourself to the point where it's a catalyst to, put you in a ceiling to never grow, right?
Of course.
But, it's just, it's amazing, though, that how some people are able to, I think what I'm finding interesting when we're talking about this is how some people are able to grasp that concept and look at it from that perspective, that gratitude,
Yeah.
and then look at it from that side of adversity. You know what I mean? And so I think my question is, what do and you do some coaching, how are people able to use adversity as their gift, or use gratitude when they haven't gone to a very dark journey like you did? Maybe again, it's maybe someone's just not happy with their corporate job.
Yeah.
How does somebody find that approach, that perspective of the gift of adversity?
Yeah, and like you were saying before, adversity is relative, right? And it's not a competition. So you're absolutely correct.
Yeah.
Trying to compare ourselves to people that have it worse, but at the same time, we do have to understand where we are and how lucky we are for what we have. The way that we can do this, though, is logic will. Here's the reality. Emotion will assassinate the truth every single time. If we allow that emotion to come in, it will tell us lies. It will let us rationalize things. And when I say rationalize, I mean rational lies. The stuff that we tell ourselves, right?
I like that.
Because we know ourselves well enough to where we can figure out what we can tell ourselves to get us out of the situation. And we give ourselves an out, and that doesn't help us. Adversity doesn't give you an out. Adversity kicks the shit out of you. It kicks you in the ass. But if you can take the logic and put it in there, so the way that you can do that is by using a tool. It's something I call the adversity scale. So if you have a piece of paper and you say 0 at the bottom of it and 10 at the top, 10 is the worst adversity you've ever faced. 0 is the best day of your life. And if you can put like a 10, so for me, my 10 was like dying and then being paralyzed.
Yeah.
And then on the traffic on the way up here, if I'm really, really honest, the traffic on the way in here was like a 3. But if I sit there and get all pissed off about it and get aggravated about it, that doesn't help me because I'm allowing emotion to dictate my behavior.
It doesn't serve you.
Or anybody around me.
Yeah.
It inhibits my ability to serve others as well. It stunts, blunts, and slows down my capacity to do anything that I should be doing. So if you can take a look at your life, and that's why I say it in that TEDx talk where I talk about, people that there was a gentleman named Master Omri Bond. I wrote about him in my book. I wrote an article in Black Belt Magazine about him. You even had an incredible person out here who grew up in Long Beach recently, and he was talking about the Cambodian genocide with the Khmer Rouge. Master Omri Bond's entire family was wiped out by that genocide. And he went back to try to get them. He had to run to the hills to survive, came back to try to get them out of the POW camp. They were already wiped out. And then he had to come to the United States, just to try to start over again. So when I got to meet him and got to know his story and got to learn from him, not only the martial arts component, but the real life lesson, if I'm sitting here bitching about anything and I look at what he's had to go through, I have no room to bitch. I have no room to complain about anything. I met a girl who was sold into the sex slave into the sex slave industry when she was 12, addicted to heroin. I met her when she was 17 and she finally got out. She heard me speak. She came out. She's like, wow, your message is amazing. You're so strong. And then I found out about her. I was like, wow, my life's been a piece of cake compared to hers. But again, it's all relative. Yeah. And we can recognize that. So if you learn the lesson from adversity, your empathy will increase exponentially. If you've fallen down and somebody's helped you up, you will always remember that person. And you will always remember what it was like to fall down and how that felt. So when you see somebody else down, hopefully you pay it forward. But if you get stuck in adversity and you just feel like you're oppressed and you're not trying to change, you're not trying to adapt, you're not trying to get stronger from it, you will be stuck there, like we talked about before. So again, if you look at a person that lifts weights, it's called resistance training. Yeah. You're training yourself to overcome resistance. But if you just pick up 135 pounds every day and you never try to put more weight on it, you're never going to get stronger. Yeah. So understand that if you want to be better at something, you also have to be prepared for the inevitable adversity that will come with that, because that's what's preparing you to get stronger. Adversity in nature is what strengthens everything. If you try to get a butterfly out of a cocoon, if I try to put a knife in there and make it easier for it to get out, it will never survive when it gets out because it's not strong enough. Yeah. These are litmus tests that make us level up to get stronger.
And it makes us who we are eventually, to who we're destined to be. who we're striving to be.
Who we're striving to be, who we're capable of being. And that's why art is amazing, because iron sharpens iron. If you listen to Andy, if you listen to Ed, all the amazing people in there, it really makes you think, man, you know, I thought I was doing pretty well. And then you see what they're doing, and you see how they think, and you see where their mindset is. And it makes you realize, I've got a lot more I can be doing. I've got a lot more capacity, and I could be helping a lot more people.
Yeah.
And that's why we're in it.
Yeah. Man, it's crazy, because sometimes we may overlook certain, you know, subjects, and we look at adversity, and if you could just shift your mindset into a different different frame and look at it from a different perspective, it's almost as if you could enrich your life. And it's just, is there a way we could pass that on for people that may be stuck in that ceiling?
Absolutely. I mean, you have to find the opportunity within that adversity. And the reason why people get stuck in it is because they are resistant to change. And we all know that, you know, people will stay in a painful area until the desire to change is actually less painful than the actual situation.
Yeah.
So once that happens, now they're like, well, I can actually be in less pain by changing. So you have to go through and you have to figure out, where do you want to go? Where are you now? And then what's stopping you?
Yeah.
If you're allowing your perception of adversity to slow you down, you're never going to get beyond that. So the thing too is, we have to have this mentality about adversity before we get into the heat of battle. Because when I'm in the middle of it, there's no way I can put this into play. I have to have the idea that once I get through this, I'm going to be stronger. I'm going to be wiser. I'm going to be able to help more people with this knowledge. But if you don't think about, if you're in the middle of it, you really can't think like that, because once the adrenaline comes in, fear, anger, emotion, again, it assassinates what we're trying to get done.
Yeah.
So if you're going through hardship right now, whatever that hardship may be, understand that there is something you're supposed to be learning from it. And for those of you that are saying, well, that's easy for you to say, the lesson you may need to be learning from your adversity is that you should never, ever put yourself in that situation again. If you're in a cycle of abuse, if you're in a cycle of alcoholism, a cycle of drugs, the lesson is to break that cycle and just stop with as much as you can right now. Start with that baby step and continue to move forward. You have to understand that unhealed trauma for some people looks like alcoholism. For some people, it looks like promiscuity. For some people, it looks like gambling. For some people, it looks like perfectionism. And so we have to be aware of those things.
They come in so many forms.
They come in so many forms because they're just as unique as each individual person, each hardship that they've gone through. But by being able to recognize it, you can not only help them, but you can also understand that they're a big reflection of you. And the stuff that you're seeing in them is probably something that you can see in yourself. And if there's something within them that needs to be improved on, do the same for you.
Yeah.
And that's where a lot of the opportunity lies.
Man, I hope everybody recorded that, wrote the note. You know, what's funny is, before you came up here, I wanted to say, like, hey man, I have a great feeling this is going to be one of my best podcast episodes. But I don't want to put any pressure on you.
No pressure, Marcus.
No pressure, Marcus.
You should bring it, but no pressure.
Dude, I love it, man. You know, one of the things, we're going to be running out of time soon, but I did want to ask you, this dawned upon me because adversity was your greatest gift. Everything you went through. Now you're paying it forward. You know, you're doing all this amazing stuff. I love what you're doing with the podcast, by the way. Congrats. It was top, I think, it was noteworthy.
Number one new noteworthy.
Yeah. Aside from the adversity, what else do you think you're probably most grateful for?
I'm grateful that I'm able to actually, that's what I try to focus on, is I try to show that I've never met anyone who has achieved anything remotely successful who has not gone through tremendous adversity. As a matter of fact, there is a direct proportion. The more adversity you have been able to overcome, the more you're able to achieve.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so that's what I try to focus on, to show people. It's like, listen, you may see Andy Frisella, he's amazing, right? But if they knew the backstory about him being stabbed, if they knew all the hardship that he went through before that, they may have a much greater appreciation for what he has done, what he is doing, and for where he's going with what he's doing. And that's what people need to understand. So people see their own hardship within my story. And that's the beauty of it. So if you see somebody that's gone through hardship and you're like, man, they had it harder than I did, and they've achieved a lot more than I have, then if that's the case, that should be your indicator. Yeah, there's more in you.
Mm-hmm.
You should be demanding more from yourself. And if you're not
I like
pushing
that.
yourself to that edge, and if it's not for you,
Mm-hmm.
then do it for your wife, do it for your kids,
Yeah.
do it for your family, because somebody else needs what you have.
Do it for the world.
Do it
Yeah.
for the world. That's
Yeah.
it. And people talk about a ripple effect, but a ripple effect is not enough. It has to be a tsunami. You have to create impact. And impact, in my opinion, is if I impact somebody with my conversation or with my wisdom, they don't just feel good for 10 minutes and then leave.
Yeah.
They change their behavior. And that changed behavior changes every single person around them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what impact is.
It's like
And
a
that's what
virus. Yeah.
a positive virus. And
Yeah.
that's what I'm trying to do. And that's between speaking, writing, podcasting, coaching. I want to just do it in every medium that I can.
Yeah.
And help the people that are receptive to this. And if they're not receptive to it now, then I hope that they keep it in mind, because eventually in life, adversity is going to knock on your door.
Yeah.
And if you don't have this ready by then, it may be a rough go.
Yeah, definitely. Well, listen, Marcus, anything that I could do to help you with what you're trying to do, you know I'm here. I know we're going to be doing a lot more work together, and I'm excited, man. I love everything you're doing because it aligns with everything I'm trying to do.
Of course.
Where can everybody find you if they want to reach out to you?
They can go to MarcusAureliusAnderson.com. They can check me out there if they want to hire me to speak or potential coaching or whatever, or stuff for companies, consulting programs. Or you can find me on social media anywhere on Marcus Aurelius Anderson on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, any of those places. Just connect to me and reach out.
Dude, I love it, man. And you know, as you can tell, only legends signed this infamous canvas, man.
I'm
so
stoked.
don't sign Hercules, don't sign Thor, sign your name, the name that you've embraced.
I will.
I appreciate you so much, man. Also, his book, The Gift of Adversity, I just got my copy, which thank you, by the way.
Of course.
I will leave a link on the description below. Do me a favor, guys. Again, this podcast has always been about trying to be a vessel for positive influence and positive energy. Do me a favor. If you know that this particular episode can impact somebody's life, please share it with them. That's all that we ask. If you're listening or watching, please tag us and let us know. Let us know what you think. And again, I appreciate everybody's love and support. Merchandise is available on the website, shop.ejcruise.com. But just you guys listening and sharing is enough for me. And I appreciate you guys so much. Marcus Aurelius Anderson, my brother.
Thank you, brother.
Arte in the building, man. You know what time it is.
You know.
I appreciate you. Marcus is going to sign this canvas. Thank you guys so much. Parables, we're out of here.